Hi, Corbin. Mr. Parrish here with a few comments about the summary reaction paper. First, I think this is a much more successful paper than the last time, so that's good news. The thing I really want to concentrate on here is how you're integrating the sources, documenting them, a big thing to take away from this course. So documentation begins with the Works Cited page, so let me go there first. Now from this view, you'll see you're centering these citations. You really want to create that hanging indent. So that's done by indenting the second and third lines. If you're having trouble doing that, just Google it and watch a YouTube video. It's the easiest thing to do. Now you'll notice that in MLA style, we give last name first. So this Katie Russell becomes Russell, comma Katie. Grayson Schmid becomes Schmid, comma Grayson. That's the way it's done. But if you look at how you're introducing the sources in your paper, so let's go back to page 1. You'll see that when you introduce Grayson Schmid, you maintain that last name, first name, and of course that's not the intention here. So in the text, the individuals go by their names in the regular order. So I've kind of revised that here. You'll also want to avoid this pattern where you have her name and then the pronoun she right after it. That's an automatic correction. Just rewrite it so that you only have to do it one time. In this case, you give the article title, then instead of she goes on, just put her name in that spot. There needs to be some type of indication or punctuation between the signal phrase and the quote. So if you are not using a word that like writes, suggests, argues, colon usually would do it. That's what I've indicated here. Now, Schmid brings up that this is the signal verb mark, which just suggests using a stronger word. And again, chapter 2 of They Say, I Say has a whole list of these signal verbs which are appropriate for different situations. Now on page 2, when Katie Russell's article is summarized, you have some of the similar issues. One thing, when you write, when you set up your page, make sure that the identifying information, your name, my name, the course, the date, that only appears on page 1. So don't put it in the header. If you do, it shows up on every page. This should only appear on page 1. Now, so Katie Russell, again, you're using that Russell Katie, and that becomes confusing later because you actually seem to be using her first name like you would her last name. You refer to her as Katie down here. This should be Russell, and not Katie. And then you have an additional issue because you're quoting this Edward Balfour through Katie Russell. Now, to your credit, you indicate that pretty clearly here that she quotes Balfour, but there is another way to do it, and that could be done this way. When you include the quote down, when we include this quote here, Balfour includes, and then here's the quote. At the end of that quote, you can insert this citation this way, and it's QTD, that's an abbreviation for quoted, in Russell. I explained this in the signal phrase video in, that's probably week 2. So go back and review that one if you, probably for each of the assignments. It's something that you want to constantly look back on because understanding this documentation can be really tricky. So that's one way to do it. Instead of having to constantly remind the reader that Balfour is being quoted by Russell, you can indicate it this way. And again, Russell corresponds to the name on the Works Cited page. Now, in citations, the signal phrase is often set up with a comma if you're quoting a full sentence. So homework can impact children differently. That's a complete sentence. So in that case, we'd probably want something like Russell furthermore adds, then a comma, and then comes the full quote. You don't need the word that to introduce a complete quote. That would be useful if you're connecting a partial quote to the first half of your sentence and then concluding it with the words quoted from one of your sources. That doesn't by itself constitute a complete sentence. So you have this includes, you'd want that comma again. I've seen includes as a couple of times in this batch of papers as a signal verb. I think it's probably a fairly weak one. If you look where you have to add on Balfour includes, this probably could simply be Balfour goes on to say, comma, and then there's the quote. It's just another way to include that ands part. Now a little farther down, here's a case, I think, where you have that partial quote. So the skilled teacher will be able to, and then comes the quoted material. Really, that's probably the period where that sentence ends. This would be very beneficial as beginning a new sentence. So that's what the sentence boundaries refers to. And then this last one, assignments preparing students for life. This probably would be better rephrased as assignments that prepare students for life. Still, I think you did your response paragraph, very strong response to it, exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for, and you seem to set up what you want to say pretty well using the two summaries. So, progress in this assignment. Let's keep it up. We'll see what you do on the position paper next.